Hey, you're probably using software as a service and think that's the latest and greatest thing. But guess what? That's being eclipsed by an even more important business model. Stick around, and I'm going to let you talk to an expert who's going to show you how it's done. Hello, and welcome to another episode of CISO Tradecraft, the podcast that provides you with the information, knowledge, and wisdom to be a more effective cybersecurity leader. I'm your co-host, G. Mark Hardy. Today I'm here with my co-host, Ross Young, and we're going to be talking about a topic that's reshaping your CISO role, whether you realize it or not. You see, we've gone from on-prem to the cloud to software as a service, and we figure, hey, we've reached the apex. But I said maybe software itself is already becoming legacy. Well, think about this. To unpack that, Ross is going to join us, and we've got a show where we're going to teach you something of interest. So stick around because we're going to be doing some live demos here about how to actually build stuff. You know, we talk about AI, and but you can do a little bit of vibe coding. How about if you could build an entire cybersecurity product in the course of just a few minutes? This is going to be pretty awesome. So we're going to do that live demo. We're going to show some helpful diagrams so you can watch this on YouTube if you're listening to it. They'll give you a chance to play it a second time if you're just listening to it while you're out for a walk or something like that. But you're going to see some really cool content. So Ross, this is some pretty cool stuff. So tell me about what's going on and what are these challenges that CISOs need to be aware of when it comes to, if you will, the sunsetting of software as a service?
Yeah, so I started in computer science in 2000, and I was in college and I was programming. And back then it was really hard. You had to learn how to program in C++ or Java and go down this route. And I just can tell you the amount of hours I've spent trying to troubleshoot and find semicolons in my code or missing commas or all these things. It was a nightmare. It was so hard to do computer science back then. And that is historically how programming has been for like 40, 50 years. And as of about 2 years ago, LLMs have completely changed the game. And when I say LLMs, I'm talking large language models like Claude Code, like Google Gemini, like GitHub Copilot. And these capabilities allow people to write software, not in C++, not in Python, but in English. And it spits out the code in those programming languages for you. This is so helpful because now the ability to write code is the best it's ever been. You can take someone who is non-technical, maybe a marketer, and he's like, hey, I want to write a marketing tool. He queries Claude Code. It creates an application, and he's prototyping things in minutes, not months, not years, but minutes. And that is such a huge paradigm shift for us, and it changes the game on how we do software development for everyone.
Interesting. So we're seeing this software as a service as being something that's provided by vendors. What are we moving to? What are we going to call this stuff? Is it just shadow AI? Is it more than that? Because we've talked about shadow AI in prior episodes, but this is more than that. This is an actual business initiative.
Yeah, so I like to flip the order of software as a service to say service as software. And here's the difference, right? Software as a service, I go and I buy a tool, but then I still have a team who has to go maintain that tool. Just think of a tool like Qualys. Yes, it's easy to go deploy Qualys in the cloud, but I still have to have a lot of team members go and work with all the developers to go fix all the vulns and all that patch vulnerability management, which is so time consuming. So people are saying, how do I automate that work? And you just think about what we did when we were in kind of the SIEM space. We created a SOAR tool to do automation and response so we didn't have to have incident responders go do everything. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. How do I build software that allows me to automate every one of those human tasks so I can minimize the labor costs? And this is really, really big because whenever you look at any application, there's always three costs. And this is something I talk about in my book, Cybersecurity's Dirty Secret, Why Most Budgets Go to Waste, which is there's labor costs, there's licensing costs, there's hosting costs. And usually labor costs are the big one. So if you can lower those, that's a huge shift. And that's why we're seeing this shift to using services as software.
Interesting. So it's really changing the model around from going to a third-party vendor and saying, hey, go build me something or buy a commercial off-the-shelf product, or go to RSAC and go view all the vendors out there and pick one. It's sort of like picking up a puppy up over at SPCA. Oh, I like that one. It's cute. Maybe it'll work out well with everything else that I have in my enterprise. But the new model that you're suggesting is that we start from a business perspective. We don't require the skills at programming. I did a computer science degree as well, although actually in my day I had to deal with things that were a little bit older than that. There we go. Some old punch cards that I keep around on my desk just to remind me of the ancient days. But what we're talking about now is by being able to accurately and correctly and precisely describe what the business process is, that we could use some of these AI coding tools to generate a prototype or even a functional piece of code that is going to accomplish that business objective. Now, that's absolutely huge because it's going to change our paradigm. As you said, maybe we don't need to assign our people to just grinding out code. Maybe they get more intellectually interesting things, such as reviewing the code and learning from it, or coming up and teaching our cybersecurity people business skills, which is going to be really helpful for them as they work their way up the food chain with regard to their career. So when you look at, as you had mentioned in your book, and your total cost of ownership, what's that actually going to do? Do you have any thoughts in terms of how we could measure that to prove a return on investment to our leadership team so that they can say this investment is worthwhile?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And what I might look at is labor hours as an example of where to do that. So let's just say it takes my enterprise architect, is one of my most expensive resources at maybe 250 or 300K salary, a full week to do one threat model, right? That's 40 hours of work, and I can basically derive a cost associated with that. And now let's say I could actually build a service as a software where I could automate the creation of a threat model. Well, if that can spit it out in, let's just say, a 10-minute agent response, think about I just saved 39 hours and 50 minutes. And not only that, but I've actually standardized it. I can say, here's the inputs I want to have, here's the templates I want to create. And this allows two things that we haven't historically had. One is scale, right? Maybe that enterprise architect could only do one threat model per week. And now I can do it on every one of my repos, on every code change. That is huge. We've never had that capacity before. And the second thing is speed. Just like I mentioned before, if you can go from 40 hours to 10 minutes, now you can repurpose that enterprise architect to do something else that's more meaningful. And so those two pieces of shifting how much speed and how much scale that we're able to do, I think are going to be really good metrics to show back the benefits to the business by adopting these types of capabilities.
Wow. So what we have then is really three things, and I think we talked about that. You had given me something to take a look at, is sort of like a diagram on the future of software from yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So for those who are listening in, without kind of reading it to it, give me the gist of what we're looking at right here on the screen.
Yeah, so I really talk about there's three worlds that we live in. The first world is software as a service. Here's a tool that you pay money, you go on a website, and then you can use that tool, but you're still spending a lot of time on the labor costs of implementation and running that tool to achieve the outcomes. We mentioned the example of Qualys and the vuln management. I'm actually going to use the example of SOCs and SIEMs and where we've seen that today. So think of Gen 1 as a SIEM. It's a tool, but I have to do a lot of work to ETL all that data. I have to do a lot of work to tune all the rules, the alerts, all of these things. That is software as a service. The second piece of where that's kind of evolved to is services as software. You can think of this as SOAR. I took my subject matter experts on the incident response team and I said, hey, what do most of the alerts look like? We're going to write some very, very tuned patterns to look for. And then we're going to create some automation scripts that says, if you see this, I want you to do that, right? If this and that kind of functionality. And the problem with this is the same problem we found in antivirus. It's really hard to know all the patterns. Bad guys are always evolving their techniques. And so you just don't know what the new pattern is going to be that gets past your firewall and get into your systems. And so we even saw, the switch from antivirus to EDR to say we can't actually define all the regex patterns to look for. We have to be smarter in thinking about how we do that. And that's kind of the problem with SOAR today is you have to define all of the things you're looking for, which is basically a limitation based on your team, their expertise, and their amount of time to put value into the tool. Enter the third generation of tools. We would call this an AI SOC. I like to call them as systems of agents. The difference here is instead of my experts putting in every special pattern that we're looking for, what I do is I train an LLM on the outcomes or the goals I want it to achieve. We call these intents. And what I mean by that is, hey, this is what good looks like. This is what bad looks like. If you see something kind of like this is probably a bad thing. And by giving it, kind of some of those explanations, it'll say, oh, here's the pattern I know you told me about, but there are 3 other patterns that are similar to this MITRE TTP from the MITRE attack framework that we also think would be in scope that look like bad activity, and we're going to alert on those too. And so this is really powerful for a couple things. One, it actually gives you more coverage than you've ever had before. And 2, it gives you evolving coverage because as the LLMs get smarter, so does your alerts because it's not just a one and done regex pattern. It's based on real-time queries of that LLM. And so that type of an approach where you're building these agents that you give them goals and they give you outcomes is really where we're seeing most technology shift to today.
Well, that's fascinating. So we're going from the software as a service, which is kind of the traditional model, to the services as software, as you've described. But that's not the end state there. We keep on going to these systems of agents. And going from the software as a service to services software, as you described, it makes an awful lot of sense because like a lot of other departments within organizations, we may be headcount limited. We're not given the opportunity to have unlimited hiring, and anything that we can automate, and we can automate and make it work effectively, then we can improve our ability to deliver services on budget, and that makes sense. So the orchestrated response, or SOAR, is now being replaced by, as you had saying, these AI SOC agents because, well, the SOAR isn't fast enough and these agents can, if you will, think for themselves, not really think, but they can, as you had said, generalize patterns to go out beyond that. So now with these large language models, what we're going beyond, you said antivirus to EDR, EDR to SOAR. Now we've got these SOC agents and then finally going ahead and almost handing the keys to the computer systems themselves. Beyond reducing the labor costs and improving our accuracy, those sound like the really good things. What are the potential downfalls and what should we be careful of before we push the I believe button on this type of a solution?
So the first thing I will always say is I don't think most people are really good at estimating the maintenance cost of a system. Yes, I can build it in an hour. But does that mean I truly understand how much updates, how much patches, how much new feature requests are coming? Probably not. So we often overinflate our abilities to support software because of how easy it is to create. And I think that's the first gotcha. The second thing that I would also say is there's always a bit of scope creep. Someone sees that you built something amazing, and then they're like, oh, I need you to add this feature. And then don't forget this functionality. And it keeps growing and growing and growing. And then you're like, oh, wow, that really is a full-time job to build this. So that is maybe where you have some of the benefits of SaaS, where they have a whole fleet of engineers building the software who really think things through versus somebody vibe coding something on a lunch break. I think it's important to really say, if we're going to do this, how do we give it an enterprise initiative, not just a college try, right?
Yeah, and I think if we go back, and I'm kind of tempted to go I will grab a book off my shelf. And I've referred to this a couple times in the past, crossing the chasm. This is Jeffrey Moore's, means that in the early stage, when you have your new customers, the people who are going to go try stuff, your early adopters and your main business folks. That gap there means that over here, when you start out with an idea, you're customizing all of your solutions for the next customer. Hey, I need to get someone to use this. So they said, hey, can we make it do this? Can we make it do that? So these innovators and early adopters, we adapt to them. But your point is that when you're dealing with a software as a service, they've already jumped that gap. And they're already into the early and late majority, which means we've kind of locked down what our feature set is. You can go ahead and wait for version 2. So that's a danger that we end up chasing this ever-changing list of requirements because people say, well, that's cool. Can you put sprinkles on it?
And I'll give you one more here too to also think about. If you have a bad process and you automated the bad process, you just made stupid faster.
Yeah,
right. So make sure you actually have a good process that you're trying to automate in a tool before you just, make your life much more miserable.
And now we go back to our training that we learned way back when in our computer science degrees, where you understood the idea of algorithm flow and figuring out a state diagram and going from this to this to this and things such as that. So to a certain extent, we gain the capability for anybody, as you said, somebody in the marketing department to vibe code something and said, dude, it works. Well, of course, the danger is that some of these tools today are producing code that are not that secure because unless the person writing the prompt added all those requirements, ensure that you trap for errors, that you don't allow this overflow, the code just might come out because it's go ahead and it's based on all the stuff it might have found on GitHub, which could include programming errors. That said, there are vendors out there who are coming up with little shims to say at the end of every request, go ahead and add this extra set of security requirements. But back to your point about being able to take your cybersecurity professionals who have training or your app development team who have training, they have expertise, and putting them in charge of doing that vibe coding. Now you've got a couple things. One, you have somebody who has a career history knowing what they're talking about. They can articulate those technical requirements, but what we're looking for is to help our technical people progress in their careers, meaning they need to learn the business requirements. So from a certain perspective, people are looking at AI and saying, it's going to take my job or I'm going to lose my job or whatever. And I'm saying if you use it right, it's going to enhance your promotability because if you're doing it the way you're describing it, you're going to think about the business needs. You're going to think about the business requirements and how this is going to add value to the organization. And that's kind of huge. Am I on the right track here?
I think you're spot on. And the way I would describe it is if you were trying to build a website in Notepad today, that would take you forever. Versus if you use an AI coding tool and it spits back, 1,000 lines of code in 1 minute and it just makes a beautiful looking website, you would never want to build a website in Notepad again. And
or VI.
Yeah, or VI or Emacs or whatever tool you're used to using. And that shift is something I think everybody needs to understand. It's not just, hey, the geeks and the nerds are going to be the ones learning how to use AI vibe coding tools. Everybody benefits. I think we need to see the big vision that tomorrow, every role will become a developer type role in some way or shape or format. Here's what I mean by that. Maybe a marketing person would have to go in and say, hey, developers, go build me this thing on our CRM platform. But imagine if they could go in Claude Code or Google Gemini and say, I want to build a thing like this. And they start typing all the requirements in English, and then it gives them an example of that output, and it looks really, really good. And now they take that, let's call it prototype, and they give that over to the IT team, and they say, make this enterprise grade and worthy. Now you're going to get a fantastic tool. The developers know exactly what to build, and it looks way better than just this, requirements list in a Word doc that nobody even knows how to actually create a wireframe around it. So that shift is going to be important. Just like all the people had to learn how to use PowerPoint and Excel and that Microsoft Office 365 suite, we're saying right now, everybody needs to learn how to vibe code in these tools because it's so powerful to any role.
And I will agree with you. So I was with a gentleman just the other day, and he has a tool that he has developed, but it's mostly manual, but it works. It works really, really well and helps him accomplish his task. I said, well, why don't you use some software for it? Well, it doesn't do exactly what I want. They're not going to give me the budget for it. I said, well, why don't you write it? He's never tried to do that. So I sat down And I used Claude Code. And I said, all right, I understand what you're looking for. Let me describe it. And within 5 to 8 minutes, I had a working prototype. And he's like, well, and I said, oh, by the way, he said, but what if I can't talk to the internet because I got to run this on a closed system? I said, okay, make it so this code will run locally. And it said, all right, run it a second time. The first time you run it, it'll download all the libraries, and then we'll keep them localized. And now you can run it in a secure enclave. And he's like, this is amazing. I said, don't give up on this. So you've got some examples that you've put together that are a little bit more than just a 5 minute back of the envelope. Let me show you how to do something. Let's go ahead and turn the show over to you so you could go ahead and show people what it's like to really build something of value real time.
Yeah. So I want to give this example that if you're in a large enterprise today, you probably run a software composition analysis tool. And here's what I mean by that. You're going to buy something like a Sneak, a Black Duck, a White Source, Dependabot, some type of thing to analyze the software packages in your source code and say, are they vulnerable? Are they old? Do they have known vulnerabilities? Things like that. And I want to show you what a simple prompt can create in just a few lines. So I use Google Gemini. I find it super cheap. It's $14 for the Google Workspace that gives you this capability. And it just goes a little bit further than Claude Code pricing for me. And so I said, I want you to create a website that can basically function as a software composition analysis tool. It needs to be able to take a zip file, like if I went to github.com and downloaded a software repo and I got a zip, it could support that. I want to use a format like CycloneDX, which is really much the de facto software bill of materials standard. We can actually go and see what that looks like here, where it goes in and says, hey, here's all of the things to put your components, your dependencies, your compositions, all of those things that are there. For each component, I want you to actually not just be stupid and say you got 200 components that are vulnerable. Tell me which ones are actually reachable. Because if they're not reachable, they're not truly vulnerable. So do that. And then I want you to actually then figure out if there's a known vulnerability associated with that. So pull from the API at the open source vulnerability website, osv.dev. And then, give me a prediction score of how bad this is likely to go bad and if there's a known exploit around that. And not only that, but, I'm probably going to have to send this evidence maybe to a risk register or something else. So give me the capability to download this as a PDF so I could put it in a GRC tool or a risk register. That's my prompt. I know it's a lot, but the idea is I want to give a lot of input so I get a really good output on the back end. And so when I actually go and I give this, it takes about 2 minutes, and then I'm going to get a tool that looks like this, an SCA and SBOM generator, where I go in and I select a zip folder. I'm just going to use one called Node.js from -goof, which is a zip folder from a Sneak repo, and I put this in. It takes, maybe a good 30 seconds for it to go and essentially scan that repo. And then let's see what it's able to provide. And this is something that I did with just a single prompt, right? And so I think this is kind of a powerful capability that we haven't historically had for organizations. And so now, instead of, hey, which $200,000, $300,000 tool do I have to buy? Can I actually go and look at these types of tools and these scans here? And this one's actually taken a minute. I wonder if
You didn't sacrifice to the live demo gods.
Yeah. Maybe I'll go back and I'll just show one of the examples here a little bit earlier of this restore point here and see how it looks, and we'll refresh.
Alrighty.
All right. So I select my file. I use this Node.js one, and we'll see if it runs.
Here it goes.
Oh, here we go. Perfect. So let me full size this screen and see what it showed for this tool. So it says, hey, you have 35 components, 26 are reachable, 14 actually have vulns around it. We didn't see any known exploits, and we couldn't determine the score. But it gave me, the ability to go in and say, show me all the reachables, show me all the vulnerable. and also, download a PDF report or an SBOM. Now, for being able to make this in just 2 minutes, I think this is pretty freaking impressive. Now, obviously, there's going to be some tuning. Like, it's not really getting an EPS score on these CVEs. Maybe I might have another query that says, actually, give me the CVE for each of these ones that are found. And I'm going to go and tune that. But the point I want to make here is not, hey, it wasn't perfect in 30 seconds, but it's if I spent 40 hours building this tool and just tweaking, I'm probably going to get something that's like 99% of the way there. And that is the power of AI vibe coding tools. So when we start to play around with this, organizations are going to say, even if I gave my one person a week to build this tool, that's still significantly cheaper than paying $100,000 or $300,000 for this tool when I am a Fortune 2000 company and I know they're going to give me a Fortune 2000 sticker price when I ask for a quote from the vendor. So this is why we're seeing that massive change. And it's not only this, there's other reasons we're seeing. And I'll just give you one example. When I was the CISO at Count Financial, I had to have people in almost 200 countries around the world. That meant I had to encounter data localization laws in China, in Russia, and in, all these different countries. And so imagine if you go in and you're like, hey, I have to store my data in Russia. Do you think all your SaaS vendors want to store your data in Russia and China and all these other places? They don't care. They don't want to do that, especially when 99% of their business comes from English-speaking countries and the EU. So they're going to have an EU region, they're going to have a US region, and then you're on your own for anywhere else around the world. So when you look at that and say, hey, I'm probably not going to be compliant, but if I actually build it in-house where I can deploy in a data center in my own buildings, now I have ways that I can, achieve all of these things at a low cost that's highly tailored for my needs. And I think that's just how we're seeing this industry shift.
Yeah, and we're seeing other tectonic shifts taking place. So on the 20th of February, Anthropic put out a broadcast, making frontier cybersecurity capabilities available to defenders. And we can put that in the show notes, but for those following along, anthropic.com/news/quad-code-security. Well, what was the first thing that happened after that? It was a little bit like the DeepSeek thing that tanked NVIDIA a year ago. Everybody's like, oh, these software companies are going to be out of business because it's all going to be cloud-coded. Well, for those of us who knew what we were doing, we watched the market drop down. It's like, yeah, there's some guilt by association. There's some vendors that are absolutely not going to be negatively affected and some that might be positively affected. So there's a buying opportunity there. But more to the point, what we're seeing is a rapid movement away from needing somebody else to go ahead, spend weeks, months, years developing code, tuning it, and then you have to shop around just like, well, what's the best fit for me? It's never a perfect fit. Do you buy what you need, or are you sold something that because a pushy salesperson or company goes ahead and loads you up with freebies or tchotchkes and you say this is good enough? Now we can make it exactly what we need. And so I really love what you've been able to do. It's really cool how you can do that. And so what happens here? What's the impact going forward for IT organizations as well as IT security? What should we expect in the future with these capabilities now being made available pretty much to anybody who can spend at least $20 a month?
So I think we're really going to have to rethink our attack surface. And I'm actually a big fan of the /security website. They have a really nice threat model that's you can find at threats./.security. And here in this illustration, what you're able to see is, okay, we have different types of things that we didn't have before. Right? We have an AI context window, we have MCP servers, we have local resources, and each of these things creates new threats, right? So imagine if they give us a malicious model, imagine if the AI that we're talking to is actually in China and siphoning our data, all these things from excessive permissions, malicious rules, AI-generated vulnerabilities, network exposures. This is really important for us to understand because a lot of times we give our developers very broad administrative credentials. And that's something that if bad actors can land on these dev boxes and then use that as a way to get access to your data quickly, it's going to be a big, big problem for a lot of organizations.
So a lot of people are looking at this and wringing their hands saying, oh, this is getting away from me. And a couple other people looking at it and say, well, I can use tools like that. But you're actually doing one step more. You're just starting a new company, which I think is really cool. So congratulations. Welcome to the ranks of entrepreneurs. Tell our listeners or viewers a little bit about what you're really focused on and what you're building.
Yeah. So on March 1st, I started a company called Clear Capabilities Incorporated. And basically, what we're trying to do is build agentic workforce capabilities. And I'll just give you the example. When I was the divisional CISO at Capital One, I had about 200 different app teams that I oversaw. And I just couldn't scale, right? I didn't have the ability to go in and know each one of those code bases in depth, especially as they were changing daily, weekly, and go in and automate. What does a data flow diagram look like for this that's changing? What does a network security assessment look like on the firewall rules and all these different things? And so I said, you know what? What if we were to automate these things? What if we were to say the ground truth or system of record is the source code? How could I automate all of these different roles from data privacy, from AI governance, from BISO work, from enterprise architecture, and build out agents? And that is what I'm doing today. We're building all these agents out there. And so now if you have this team that is maybe, 10 architects, and because you're a large enterprise company, and you see, oh my goodness, I got 5 times as many repos coming in because my developers have AI coding capabilities. I have AI laws being passed like the EU AI Act that I have no idea if I'm compliant. What if I could actually figure that out in less than 10 minutes by deploying an agent? That is pretty cool. That gives me the ability to scale my architects in a way I've never been able to do. And I can do that for data privacy officers and all these other different roles as I start to create agents. So that's really the focus of our company, is to say, hey, we want to give your team superpowers. The developers got AI capabilities. How do we give the same AI capabilities to the rest of the team in data privacy and compliance and others? And teams are really excited about this.
Yeah, that's really quite forward thinking, because everybody else is saying, hey, look at our new AI tool and it may do something. But here, really, what we're looking at is this is almost a digital workforce. For those of us who are facing constraints in terms of hiring or headcount, and we have this increasing workload that is a downstream result of the ability to do all the AI-assisted coding. This solves that business problem. This is a tool and a resource that I haven't seen anywhere else that allows organizations to say, hey, wait, this tsunami of code coming my way, what's going to happen if we've got to go through review and approval and governance and compliance and privacy and things such like that. Kind of like the old I Love Lucy episode of the chocolate. Speed her up. And all of a sudden, they're just got stuck on their mouth and putting them down their shirt because they can't keep up. With your idea, and as you build that out, organizations can keep up. And then that's going to be an absolute requirement for being able to effectively and safely embrace all this AI coding.
Yeah, I think it's really the future. I think we're going to go in and say, hey, today I'm spending 300K on an architect, 200K on a BISO, 150K on an AI compliance officer, another 150K on a data privacy officer, and I just don't have $1 million to do this. What if I could do this with agents? What if I could, buy some agents to superpower my team? That type of thinking of where that is headed, I think, is top of mind right now for every CISO. And the smart ones are saying, I need to agentify my workforce a little bit.
So you're really coming up with some cool stuff. You did the OWASP Threat and Safeguard Matrix, the TASM, with the Tasmanian Devil with the cape, which you always like the logo. You got your book out, Cybersecurity's Dirty Secret, Why Most Budgets Go to Waste, and now your company. I'm glad to see you're doing all those things since you started hanging out with me. So, but no, you're definitely emerging as one of the industry leaders, the thought leaders out here. And so if you're a CISO or you're facing some of these challenges, come on, contact us at CISO Tradecraft or reach out to Ross directly. You can find him on LinkedIn. He's growing like crazy out there in terms of his contacts and his ability to go ahead and look at these problems and come up with workable solutions is going to transform your cybersecurity program. And then you'll be able to achieve that elusive Venn diagram of better, faster, and cheaper without having to sacrifice one for the other two.
Yeah, thanks again for mentioning that. I wrote the book. It was a fantastic thing to write, and I've just been so thankful for the opportunity to kind of share that with other people. The highlight of my day is when I meet people and they're like, "I've read your book and I love it," or you know what, I heard this week someone said it's actually mandatory training for my entire company. I bought like 10 of these for my direct employees, and they're using it, and it's saving us thousands to millions of dollars. And that is the goal. Like, my goal isn't, hey, I need to charge you $1 million to read my book. I put it out there super easy for people to go, and they're taking the lessons learned of someone who spent 20 years in cyber, worked at CIA, worked at Capital One, worked at Caterpillar, and been at large, venture capital to see where the future is headed. So I hope these types of resources help. Obviously, Gmark and myself, we put together 5 years of podcast episodes on CISO Tradecraft. So if you go to our website, CISOTradecraft.com / I think it's called episodes, you can actually go and see all those things to help you be a smarter CISO. We just love, training and giving back and helping our industry.
So, Ross, this is great. I mean, you've got a modern take now on where our industry is headed in terms of going from software as a service to service as software, and then clouds of agentic AI tools working for that. How CISOs could go ahead and become thought leaders themselves in their own organization by mastering these concepts. Get a little bit of hands time on the keyboard to figure out what you can actually do. So conceptually, it's not just somebody waving a flag or saying, yes, we could do it. You had a piece of code that you just showed the prompt right there, and out came a perfectly working, functional type of a tool. I won't mention what software it's like because I'm not trying to hurt anybody's market share. But yeah, we're finding that a lot of the things that are out there that do analysis or capture a lot of data and give you a way to sift through it can now be done in-house because we can come up with the capabilities for doing that. So absolutely essential skill. Learn how to do AI coding. And I remember talking to Gadi Everon, who had told me, if you're not spending an hour a day as a CISO with hands-on keyboard, now I got a million things to do, but be working on it, or you're going to fall behind. And you're going to realize that although we tend to think of ourselves as more executive medicine management, if you don't have any comprehension of what those capabilities are, how are you then going to be able to effectively manage risk in your organization when you have people who are not coders, who do not think about risk, who do not think about cybersecurity, and are not worried about trapping all these errors? They're just a matter of, I need something dirty and cheap, and we're just going to push it out the door and then hope that nothing goes wrong. So for listeners and watchers out there, if you haven't already got a copy, go ahead and get a copy of Ross's book, Cybersecurity's Dirty Secret, Why Most Budgets Go to Waste. We'll put a link in there, but you could probably Google that and find that on Amazon pretty easily. Lots of tips in there, ways to make your people more effective, more efficient, reduce your waste in your budget to produce a higher value for the organization, and transform your cybersecurity department from a cost center to a business enablement center, which is a huge mindset shift. And so a lot of what you've been doing is really helping to push that. So thoughts, Ross, any final words you'd like to leave with our listeners before we wrap up our show?
I don't know what to say other than just trying to be a little more grateful. Just thank you, anybody who's listened to our multiple episodes. It's really our pleasure to kind of share this tradecraft with each of you. And if this helps you in some way, please share it. We'd love to reach more people and help them. And also, if any of you have questions on some of the agent stuff that I'm building, or you're like, hey, I think this could actually help us. And yeah, I'd like to reduce 80% of the workload hitting my, teams today in cybersecurity. Please reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, Ross Young. You can find me and shoot me a message. But I just want to say thanks again for the opportunity for us to share these messages with you, because we really think this is the future of where CISOs need to be and where companies are going to evolve to.
And I agree. So thank you very much, Ross, for being part of the show and for adding all these values. To our listeners or watchers, thank you for following CISO Tradecraft. If you're not a subscriber, become one. It's really easy to do. It goes ahead, and if you give us a 5-star or thumbs up, whatever it is. And again, not grade grubbing. We don't make any money when you do that, but it does help other people find us because it improves our ranking when people are doing searches out there. We're helping you with your journey in your career. Allow us to help others with their career journey as well. If you have any questions, any comments, any feedback, get in touch with us. We're both on LinkedIn, G. Mark Hardy, Mr. Ross Young. Also, CISO Tradecraft will be pleased to engage with you. So thank you very much for being part of this program. And until next time, stay safe out there.